Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of myself, my father David, Kate, and Jared, we'd like to thank everyone and welcome you here today to share in the celebration of life for my mother, Ellen. Although her passing was quite sudden, we're here today for one reason and one reason only, because she asked us to be. She chose this beautiful spot on her own, telling us exactly how she envisioned her family and friends together, and here we are. The Moose Hill Sanctuary represented a sense of joy and nature and peace for her, and we hope that those feelings will emanate throughout the day with us all together here. Halfway through the program, we'd like to encourage anyone to come up and speak for as long as you'd like. A story, a joke, anything. And right now I'd like to welcome my father, David, to start the program.
My thanks, too, to all of you for being here. Not an event I anticipated being at for a long time. I want to do four things. I want to first recite a poem that by Ellen's and my favorite poet, Emily Dickinson, which is a poem of grief. And I don't want anybody here to feel that they should not feel grief. We are still coping ourselves. We are going to celebrate her life today, but that includes the grief that you feel. And as Jeff said, when you come up, if that's what you want to express, that's fine. Then I want to tell you something that really is funny, that you will laugh at. I am the single worst teller of jokes, but fortunately it's not a joke. It's simply a story of something that happened in the hospital. Then I want to talk for a few minutes about what I thought was the most amazing trait that she had, and that's where I'm going to have to really hold myself together. And then at the end, I want to read you a couple of pages from the novel that we wrote together, and coincidentally, I just got Amazon's announced sort of blurb on select Civil War novels that came out today. You probably get these announcements, and ours was at the top of the list. I mean, I don't think that means anything, but there it was. The title was right there, right on my phone. Kind of spooky. But I want to read a section that only she wrote that I wouldn't have touched for a thing, for the world. Because she also was a really good writer, which many of you I don't think knew. Okay. After great pain, a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore, and yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round of ground or air or aught, a wooden way regardless grown, a quartz contentment like a stone. This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow, first chill, then stupor, then the letting go. So we've been letting go, and she let us go a month ago, exactly 4 weeks to this hour it was. And we're doing okay, partly because we're able to tell really wonderful stories about her, and here is the one I want to tell. Now, this needs a little context. When she went into the hospital, we thought it was a heart valve, and she was encouraged because Beth Israel did that operation. It then switched in midstream to a very severe case of pulmonary fibrosis, which she had as a diagnosis, but which had been under control, and then suddenly, as the doctor said, flared really badly, and they poured on the steroids, which, if you also know her, she hated having to agree to, but did, but it was too late. So she knew 3 days before she died that she was going to die in that hospital bed. And Kate and I were the ones who stayed up during the night with her just in case things rushed and sped up and we had to go find the rest of the family. So we took trade-offs, and she was getting a lot of oxygen, so every once in a while she'd take the mask off and couldn't sleep and would want to talk. And so we'd talk. We'd have loads of conversations. And here is one conversation, unbelievable conversation. So she knew she was going to die. All of her life, she wanted to be cremated. All of my life with her, 46 years of marriage, I wanted to be buried. We never agreed. We also agreed not to put any pressure on the other person. She indeed was cremated. I probably will be buried. So I asked her, she was awake, it was 2 a.m, and I asked her an obvious question, well, what do you want us to do with the ashes? And she turned, this is not the funny part of the story, she turned to me and said, you guys figure that out. As if to say, one more decision I have to make? Really? So we're figuring that out. Okay. But then I remembered that I would, every 5 years or so, I'd haul our family up to a little town, Jaffrey, New Hampshire, where my favorite American author is buried, Willa Cather. I don't know if you know Willa Cather, the great American novelist. And I'd make them visit the grave, and Willa Cather's grave is there in the corner of this wonderful old cemetery. And at the bottom of her grave is obviously a buried urn of ashes of her longtime partner and roommate, Edith Lewis. And so I said to Ellen, and honest to God, I didn't think of this until I was talking to her. I said to her, well, we could do that. We could wait, and, when I'm buried, we'll put your ashes at the bottom. And she turned her head to me and she said, or at the top. 3 o'clock in the morning in the ICU at Beth Israel, I was laughing so loud, I thought they were going to come and drag me out. Okay. So that's the mood. If you want to carry on that mood today, do that, or at the top. I do want to try to tell you the most amazing trait she had, and let's see if I can hold myself together to do this. I don't have a name for it. It's a particular kind of kindness that she had from the moment I met her when she was 22 to her death at 71. Whenever she met somebody, stranger, somebody who became an acquaintance, somebody who became a friend, she would immediately spot what their best traits were, or trait. And she'd know it immediately. She was extraordinary. I mean, intuition doesn't get to it. I mean, she was extraordinarily perceptive about people the minute she would meet them. And she'd see all their traits. I mean, she wasn't some sentimentalist, or she certainly wasn't a pleaser and fawn over people. And she just saw what they were like, and she was only concerned about the worthiest trait that they had. And that would be the touchstone for her relationship with every person she met from then on. The relationship might last a month, it might be just an hour, decades. That's all that mattered to her, that the outstanding trait, and it would vary from person to person, or traits that the person had. It might not be the trait, of course, that the person thought was the best about himself or herself. I mean, when she met me, I was this skinny, geeky, Protestant, kind of haughty intellectual. Those were none of the things that she thought was best about me, believe me, none of them. I learned other things that she really loved, but it wasn't that group. So she saw right into me right away. But that's what she did, and she would cling to it and stay with it, regardless of circumstances. Okay, and I was sharing this story with my pastor in Pennsylvania just the other day, and she said very understandably, she said, well, so she saw the person's potential, what they could become. I thought about that, and I said, no, that's not it. No, it wasn't about what you could be if you paid attention to this trait. It wasn't about what you could do with it, or how to make yourself a better person. To her, it was a fact, an already established fact about you, that wasn't going to alter, didn't need to be developed. It was already there. Could it be developed? Oh, I suppose some of the traits could be. But for her, you already were worthy. Okay. That's a good word. She believed, not just believed, that's not the right word. She knew that there was something really worthy about every person. And she honed in on that, saw it, and I'll tell you, I'm sorry to drag this out, but I love this. There were many people I met with her, and you know, she'd be talking later on, and she'd say, I was really impressed with such and such about this particular man or woman, and I'd be sitting there on the couch next to her, and I'd say, really? I didn't see that. Really, you saw that? Oh yeah. And of course, a week or a month or a half a year would pass by, and I'd get to know that person, and of course, she'd be right, absolutely correct. You know, it never failed in all the years I knew her. She could hone in, and always, to the exclusion of the lesser traits a person might have, and we all have plenty of lesser traits. She'd hone in on what was best about that person, even if that person didn't know what that best was. It was just the single most amazing trait I've ever encountered. I've never known anybody who had that. I mean, maybe some of you do. I apologize, but it was so rare in my experience, and that's how she treated people. Everybody was worthy. No one was a lost soul. No one's soul had been lost yet. It wasn't going to happen. That was Ellen's greatest trait. Now, I got through that. Now, I want to read you something from the novel she wrote together with me. And just a little background. My great-grandfather fought in the Civil War under a much underrated Northern general named George Henry Thomas. And no book, in 1997, when I discovered that Thomas was a Southerner, on top of being a great Northern general, I decided to check to see if anything had been written about him, and nothing had been written about him in almost 50 years, so I decided to write a novel. I don't know why I chose that. I found out that there wasn't enough biographical information for me to really do a biography, so did it in the form of a novel, hoping to get inside of his character. Did a version of it, found an agent, sent it to some publishers, nothing. You know, not enough character development, you know, and they were right. There was something wrong with this novel. So this was in 98, and about 6 years later, Ellen said, let me work on this. And she immediately cut out the sections that curiously seemed very much about me. You know, in other words, the narrator was supposed to be somebody modeled on my great-grandfather. There were chapters that it looked like the narrator was modeled on me. Now, those went. And then we worked together on other sections, and there were certain sections I had written that she wouldn't touch, like the camp scenes and the battle scenes. And there's some copies in there that you can have of the novel. But there are also sections that she wrote entirely herself. And I want to read you about 2 pages, and I'll give you the setting because it fits with what I just said about this particular kind of kindness that she had. This is between 2 huge battles in Tennessee, or Georgia and Tennessee. One is a huge battle in Georgia that the Union has just lost, and it would have been an absolute disaster if General Thomas had not held a particular knoll against 25 charges of Confederate soldiers, and then they held the knoll till dark and retreated into Chattanooga, but then were surrounded by all the Confederate forces up on the hills. About 2 months pass, they get ready to try to force the Confederates off the hills, and Thomas smuggles his wife into the city. He only did this once in the war, and generals were doing this all the time. It drove the rank-and-file soldiers crazy that these wives kept coming in and out. But Thomas did it only once, and this is a scene where he takes the colonel, who's modeled on my great-grandfather, who's become his confidant, to meet his wife for the first time, but he doesn't tell him. That's why they're going to this. Everything's in a shambles in Chattanooga, but there's one sort of hotel that's withstood damage, and there's still a decent dining room. and he's going to take the colonel, who is also the narrator of the novel, to meet his wife. Waiting for us in the plush dining room was a regal woman in a lavender satin dress. She immediately rose as we entered and moved toward us. "Colonel Swain," Thomas said confidently, "I would like to introduce my wife, Frances Kellogg Thomas. She has made the long trip from New York at my request. I am so glad to make your acquaintance, Colonel Swain. General Thomas has told me how much he has trusted in your confidence since Stone River. I want to thank you for being such a support to my husband." Then there's some conversation, and the colonel asks how they met. And the story begins about how they met at West Point, this is true about Thomas and his wife. Her cousin was a cadet there, and Thomas was an instructor, artillery instructor. And in fact, they did meet there, historical fact. So this is how Ellen wrote it. They meet at a party, actually, at West Point. "Soon after our arrival in April, we received an invitation from Lyman to attend a Saturday night hop. It was an electrifying evening. Graduation was close at hand. The cadets were splendid in uniform, and the mess hall had been transformed for the occasion with laurel branches shading the windows and support pillars encircled with muskets and bayonets. They even had candled sconces, first used at a ball during the Revolutionary War. The transformation was remarkable. It was as though time stood still when she entered the room," Thomas quickly added. "I had been appointed instructor of artillery and cavalry at the academy in '51, and most Saturday nights I would be preparing for the classes I taught. Even though dance instruction was part of the curriculum, I made little use of it. But Cadet Kellogg requested my presence that evening, and I acquiesced. He was one of my favorite students. I saw Frances across the room even before her cousin introduced us. She was resplendent in her deep coral gown. I remember it because it was such an unusual color. The dancing was so lively that night. Beside waltzing, we danced quadrilles, polkas, gallops, lanciers, and I was finally grateful that I had paid attention in all those academy dance classes. At the end of the evening, I was so sure of my feelings and my future. All I had to do now was court her and convince her that marrying me was a good idea." There was such tenderness in his voice as he spoke. His love and admiration were unmistakable. "And courted me he did," she said, smiling. "The rest of my stay at West Point was filled with as much time with George as he could manage. My favorite moments were spent on Flirtation Walk, a romantic promenade that winds along the Hudson. That is where I received George's spoony button from inside his uniform jacket. I knew what it meant, since every young lady anticipates being given one as a sign of a cadet's intention. And George still had his from his days as a student. Please try to understand, Colonel Swain, what it means to a 31-year-old woman to be betrothed to a man she actually loves and admires. I thought my heart would burst. I would not be a spinster, and I did not compromise my values. We were married in Troy 10 years ago this November. George wore the sword presented to him by his Southampton County, Virginia neighbors for his service in Mexico and Florida. With its ornate silver, scrollwork, and gemstones, it was more beautiful than my gown. After a wedding tour to New York City, George was assigned to Fort Yuma in Arizona, the first of many separations between us, but I am so proud, Colonel Swain, to be his wife. I'll endure whatever is necessary for my husband to do what is required for our nation." I was struck by her strength and resolve. I knew they had little time together, and that the general did not bring her to camp as the other officers continually brought their wives. This was their first meeting in 2 years. We ordered the best food and wine available that night in honor of her arrival. Conversation flowed freely. Seeing the general so animated and relaxed was a much-needed respite from the stark reality of our lives. Chattanooga was a devastated town, but that meal was the finest I had in the entire war. She was remarkable. We're now going to hear a rendition of Ashokan Farewell. You'll recognize the tune from Ken Burns' Civil War series. Playing for us, and forgive me, Miguel, playing for us is Miguel Vasquez Lopez, a local cellist. Terry Strawman's family was unable to be here, and her son Wesley was going to do this on his violin. But not only did she have an appendicitis 6 days ago, her mother had a stroke, and her family could not come. But we're very fortunate to have Miguel with us today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marisa De La Garza, and I'm Ellen's daughter-in-law and Kate's partner, and the little girl talking back there, I think is my daughter, Camila. And I am really honored because I get to read the comments of Terry Strawman, who, as David mentioned, was not able to be here today. Ellen's best friend, she's in Maryland with her family. But she just texted me and she said she just felt such sorrow that she wasn't able to be here today and just wanted to tell you all how much she loved her. So I will start with her comments. I want you to just envision Terry here, those of you who know her. I met Ellen in the late 80s at a community mental health center where we both worked. She was my supervisor in a program that served children and families. She was wiser than anyone I had ever met and yet know. And when I think about it, at the time she was so young, just in her 40s. We became friends, and that friendship lasted for many years, right up to the moment she died. When I worked for Ellen, I was naive and inexperienced. But I remember I pretty much loved and felt gratified by the work I was doing, and I enjoyed my colleagues. I felt like I did a good job, and that with Ellen's guidance and supervision, I could possibly do some good for the kids and families with whom we worked. One day, it was time for our annual staff reviews, and I remember Ellen taking me outside to a table in the back of our office so she could give me my performance evaluation. I was feeling pretty hopeful that I could earn a good review, and like most financially struggling caseworkers, I was hoping for that often elusive pay raise. Ellen began the review upbeat. She gave me quite a few compliments and suggested some areas for growth, and then she started to go over the formal part of the review. Not unlike a report card in grammar school, the evaluation tool presented 3 options for each performance marker: does not meet expectations, meets expectations, exceed expectations. Based on Ellen's pleasant spirit and complimentary prelude to my evaluation, I was feeling pretty optimistic about my chances to earn a lot of those exceeds expectations. Boy, was I surprised. Much to my dismay, I learned that I was simply meeting expectations. The look of incredulity on my face was obvious, so Ellen tried to explain to me what exceeds expectations was all about. She explained that meeting expectations still meant I was doing a really good job, but that doing a really good job was what was expected. I can't quite say I walked away feeling confident that I understood that concept in terms of my job performance. I can relate to this. That issue confounded me for a long time. But outside of work, I did learn a lot from Ellen about what exceeding expectations meant in terms of friendship. Ellen, you exceeded my expectations of what it means to be a friend. Thank you. Anna Quinlan writes, sometimes I will see a photo of an actress in an unflattering dress or a blouse too young for her or a heavy-handed makeup job, and I mutter, oh, she must not have any girlfriends. We trust our friends to tell us what we need to know and to shield us from what we need to discover and to have the wisdom to know the difference. Real friends offer both hard truths and soft landings and realize that it's sometimes more important to be nice than to be honest. That, too, is knowledge that often comes only with age. Henry James wasn't exactly a warm fuzzy, so I think it's significant that even he once said, 3 things in human life are important. The first is to be kind, the second is to be kind, and the third is to be kind. Thank you, Ellen, for exceeding expectations with your ability to offer hard truths and soft landings and for your constant kindness. We all have friends we can turn to in a myriad of circumstances in life, but few are the friends we can turn to when what we need most is to hear a hard truth that one is offered up and with a soft place to land. Ellen, you were that friend for me. In the fall of 2001, after a difficult pregnancy with my second son, Matthew, I was diagnosed with toxemia, and I had to have an emergency C-section and deliver Matthew at 33 weeks. He weighed just 4.5 pounds and had to stay in the special care nursery, the equivalent of a NICU. I was discharged from the hospital about a week before he was. At home, I had an adorable and energetic 3.5-year-old son, Wesley, who was waiting for me to come home from the hospital and to get back to our normal routine. Now, most of us, when we have a baby, we anticipate that people will be kind and generous. Some bring us lasagna. Some bring us cookies and cake. And others bring more lasagna. You find you eat a lot of lasagna when you have a baby. In the midst of that scary and fragile time, Ellen and David came to Maryland and stayed for about a week with me and my family while Matthew was still in the NICU. Ellen would drive me to the hospital each day so I could nurse Matthew and spend time with him. If any of you have ever had to leave your newborn baby in the hospital, you know what it means when you aren't allowed to drive yourself to the hospital because you had surgery. And you are completely reliant on the goodness of others to volunteer to drive so you can be with your baby. While Ellen was getting me to and from the hospital, David was busy dropping off or picking up Wesley at preschool and keeping him entertained until we returned. And when Ellen would bring me back home from the hospital, she would cook, she would clean, do our laundry, and join David in entertaining Wesley so I could take a shower and a much-needed nap. Then when Scott would get home from work, Ellen and David would man the fort with Wesley so Scott could take me back to the hospital to spend more time with Matthew so that he too could be with our baby. One day that week, I sat at the dining room table and observed that Ellen and David were busily fussing with our fridge and the freezer. It took me a few moments to realize that what they were doing, given my lingering haze from the magnesium sulfate I had been on in the hospital, was they were cleaning our refrigerator and our freezer, which had been sorely neglected during the months of my difficult pregnancy. I protested, "Oh, you guys, please, you don't have to do that. Seriously, no." To which Ellen said, in that voice you all know so well, "Oh, stop." My refrigerator never looked so good as it did that day. Ellen, thank you for exceeding my expectations of what friends do for friends. You too, David, and thank you both for setting the bar for what a clean fridge should look like. That's true. For more years than I can remember, Ellen and I talked on the phone every week, sometimes every day, and sometimes more than once a day. Sometimes those phone calls were after many emails, and oftentimes After Ellen finally learned how to text message, after many text messages, we talked, texted, and emailed about everything. Politics, women's roles, books and movies, marriage, parenting, friendships, and religion. We talked and we texted and we emailed about everything and nothing in particular. About all the important things and about all of the inconsequential stuff. Things about house and home, like the importance of the proper height of bar stools for a kitchen island, or how to make and enjoy a really good dirty martini, and about why some days really scream for a martini or a cosmopolitan, and why both should be enjoyed from really nice long-stemmed martini glasses. We talked a lot about norepinephrine, referred to as maintenance. Women know what I mean by maintenance. I mean those things we do every day so that we look and feel good, so that we feel we are presentable to the outside world. Some maintenance things really vex us, such as facial moisturizers. Ellen would say, why are there so many face creams? Why are they so expensive, and which ones will keep the wrinkles at bay? Can anyone really keep the wrinkles at bay? Do you think La Mer face cream really works well, and is it really worth that much money? What about allergic reactions? I was allergic to the last 2 face creams I tried. Oh dear. And we dished about the maintenance of our hair and our hair color. Nora Ephron once wrote, there's a reason why 40, 50, and 60 don't look the way they're supposed to, and it's not because of feminism or better living through exercise. It's because of hair dye. Exactly, and Ellen would agree. Finally, we wondered about silly things like, how does Barbara Walters stay so fit? And why do people care about Kim Kardashian? Is it Kim with an I or KYM with a Y? I mean, really, if you can't gossip about celebrities, who can you gossip about? And Ellen understood this. Every year we'd be glued to our phones during the Oscar Awards, calling each other every 15 minutes. Our husbands thought we were nuts. Kate Blanchett's dress was gorgeous. Oh, Lord, look at George Clooney. I love him. I think that was Ellen. What was Angelina thinking wearing that? And can they please just bring back Billy Crystal? And of course, if only Meryl Streep could meet us, she would be best friends with us too. She just doesn't know it yet. Ellen understood that it is just as important to talk about the little superficial things that come unaccompanied by stress as it is to be able to seriously discuss the times in life that are joyous: marriages, babies, grandchildren, job opportunities, job promotions, a beautiful day at the beach, and a great vacation, and also those that are truly difficult. When a child is diagnosed with a chronic illness, when a miscarriage occurs, when tragedy strikes, when people hurt us, and when we get sick, and when someone we love dies unexpectedly. Ellen, thank you for exceeding expectations in the department of understanding life and being the kind of friend who would discuss anything and everything that mattered, easy or hard, shallow or deep, joyful or sad. The last few years were challenging to Ellen health-wise. Always a vigorous person with a tremendous work ethic, she had very few indulgences that involved being still. She liked working the daily crossword puzzle and enjoyed a good cup of morning coffee. She loved watching a good movie or reading the New York Times or a good book. But historically, Ellen was always on the move, whether in the house or in the yard or in the office when we worked at King County, etc. In the last year or so, she had started to talk a little about the challenges of aging. She never really actually complained about it, as much as it was just really a matter of fact about it. I'm 70. I get tired. My sciatica is acting up. I have aortic stenosis. You know, I've been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. And still true to form, even on her most tired or achy days, Ellen was taking care of others in some capacity, and she was still so very curious and keenly interested about all of our lives and how we were doing and about the world around her. When I arrived at the hospital the other week, Ellen's first words were, "Oh God, who's watching the boys? How is Scott?" Even as she lay in the hospital, she was worrying and caring about me and my family. When we were alone in her room, she took my hand and looked me in the eye and shared with me what she always regretted and felt sad about, not being able to see her good friend Judy when Judy was dying of cancer. And she told me she was glad that I came, and I told her I was grateful I was able. I love you too. Even in allowing me to come to be with her in her final days, Ellen was taking care of me, and I believe she was allowing me to take care of her as well. Even in dying, Ellen exceeded expectations of what it means to be a friend, to go the distance with someone you love to the very end. Thank you, Ellen, for this gift. Thank you for all you entrusted with me. Thank you for everything you taught me. And thank you for being such an extraordinary, generous, and loving friend. I miss you.
My daughter wants to sit with everyone except for me. I think the last time my mom visited me in Seattle, she cleaned my oven as well. Were you remembering that? She was amazing. And I, too, I'm Ellen's daughter, Kate. I think I've said hi to everyone here today, but want to thank you for coming, reiterate what my dad said, and Jeff. And I, too, am going to caveat this by saying that I have a couple stories I'd like to tell. I don't know if I'll be able to tell them, so that'll be okay if I can't. So I'm just going to try to get through it. Anyway, I'm a Thai kind of girl, which... especially 40 years ago, I don't think moms sat around and dreamed about when their daughters would grow up and wear ties and suits. My mom had a saying for this when we were little, when I was younger. She'd say, someday we'll make my ruffles and your plaids work together. And plaids were before I came out, ties were after I came out. And, a couple years ago, I actually got this tie in the mail from my mom for my birthday. And I remember at the time uploading it to some social media and saying, you've really arrived in your relationship with your mom when not only does she send you a tie in the mail for your birthday, but it's a fucking awesome tie. And I was just so happy on that day because I felt like she really saw me. And not only saw me, but celebrated it. So, fast forward a year later, and marriage equality had passed in my state, Washington and Seattle. And I actually happened to have a meeting with then Mayor Mike McGinn the next day, and about a project I'm working on, and so I wore this tie to the meeting. And I just felt like I was taking her with me that day. And then on that day in City Hall, I was bringing my family's acceptance of me with this profound recognition that, soon I could potentially get married in City Hall as well and be recognized by the state and the city that I worked so hard for. My mom was a liberal person. Like crazy liberal. Like, step away from the MSNBC, Mom. No, it's not a conspiracy theory, I promise. But I'd often joke in Seattle, my mom's actually more liberal than I am, which is saying a lot for a lesbian in Seattle. But, she really walked the walk with her politics. And whether you disagree with her politics or not, she really walked the walk. And she believed in, justice and truth and righteousness, and then she demonstrated it. And probably the best way that she did that was when Marisa and I got married legally in December in Seattle. It was with a very small ceremony with Jeff, and Marisa's sister Elena came out and actually wound up officiating for us. It was just us and our daughter Camila downtown at the sculpture park. And on that day, Jeff arrived with a gift for Camila in his pocket, lipstick, of course, and my Grandma May's monogrammed handkerchief for me to wear in my pocket during the ceremony. And then the next day, she sent to us these matching Tiffany bracelets, infinity bracelets for Marisa and I to wear. And then she started calling like 10 times. How did it go? Can you send the pictures? How was it? How was Jeff? how was Camila? Was she well behaved? Just really caring. And I remember saying, you know, Ma, we're the most married out of all your kids. We had our kid 4 years ago. You know, we just want to file our taxes as married. And she said, no, this is a big deal, Kate. This is a big deal. You have to celebrate that. And it was a big deal. And I stand here today knowing that most daughters aren't lucky enough to have that support, and not only that support, but that celebration from their mom on such a day. When I was wearing a tie with my wife Marisa, getting married. So I feel lucky today to have had that. I feel lucky that she was that type of person. I also feel lucky that we spent an amazing amount of time in Florida but 2 months ago for my older brother Jared's wedding to his beautiful wife Amanda. You know, I'm usually the planner in my family, but for some reason, we'd been through a lot last year. I just could not plan anything for this trip. And finally my mom called me and she said, I'm going to take care of it. And she rented us this amazing house, like the most amazing house we've ever stayed in as a family. Great for the kids, right near the beach, pool. And then I got her to agree to stay the extra week afterwards to go to Disney World with my family and Camila and my dad and mom. And I said, just one day, we're going to Disney for one day. And she said, okay, we'll do that. That sounds good. And so that was about 3 months before the trip. And then she called me. She called me about 2 months before, and she said, you know, Kate, we can't just show up at Disney. And I was like, Mom, we're just going to show up. I can't plan anything right now. Camila's going to love it. She's only 3.5. Anything she sees, she's going to love. And she said, no, you don't understand. There are things you have to sign up for at Disney World in advance. And they're very special things. And if you don't sign up for them now, Camila won't have the best experience that she can have. So I said, okay, fine, you know, whatever you want to do, that's cool. She said, okay. So then she calls me back later and she says, okay, so I want to talk to you about something, but you have to promise not to get funny about it. Oh, okay, I won't get funny about it. She says, there's this thing we have to do, and it's a dinner, and it's a dinner that I really want you to go to because I think it's really good for Camila to go to this dinner. I think it'll be perfect for her. I said, oh, okay. Well, what's up with the dinner? She goes, well, it's a dinner with Cinderella and Prince Charming. And they come to your table and they sit with you and you have these character experiences. So I said, okay, well, my daughter hasn't worn pants in, 2 years, and she's memorized the name of every Disney princess ever created, so I think she would love that. And so that sounds great, let's do it. So I just sort of let her run with it, and then it wasn't until right before the trip where she told me that the dinners are actually sold out like 6 months in advance, you know. So my mom had called every single day for the last 6 weeks to make sure that we could get a spot at this dinner. And not only did she reserve us a spot at the dinner, but she got us the first showing so that the characters would be the freshest and have the most energy for us. And then it was on my birthday. And so when we got to the restaurant, she gave me this card, and she was very adamant about me opening the card when we first sat down, and it has this little plaque on it that you can take off and hang on the wall. And she said, you have to make sure you hang this on your wall so you can always look at it. And it says, never lose the spark that makes you you. And so here we are sitting at this, dinner, and Prince Charming comes out. And no offense, Daddy, but I've never seen Mom more happy and excited than when Prince Charming came to our table. It was like the most incredible thing. And the most incredible thing for my daughter. She ate strawberry soup, and we just had the most amazing time. And I'd always known that my mom had been obsessed with Cinderella, and I went to a women's college, so I was always like, why does the prince need to rescue her? Who's this fairy godmother? Can't she help herself? I was like really dismissive of Cinderella, and I didn't learn, which makes me kind of sad, until after she died, when Terry was at our house looking through her things with the wind-up Cinderella toy that's inside. She said, well, you know why your mom loved Cinderella so much, right? And I said, actually, I don't think I ever asked her. And she said, well, when she was younger and she was having a hard time in her family, my grandma May, her mom, would take her downtown to see Cinderella, and it was like a place where she could experience just kindness and true love and kind of an escape from hard times. So, I feel lucky that we had these memories in Florida. And when we were leaving, we took all these pictures at the table, and she hated all of them. They weren't good enough. And so she hated to have her picture taken. And so as we were leaving, the prince, by that time, was in full swing, and there were toddlers everywhere. And we're leaving, and she said, I need another picture. I thought, okay, we'll get another picture. Let's just walk out. And she said, no, I need another picture. Okay. So Prince Charming happened to be at a table with literally a 2-year-old. And I said, are you asking me to take Prince Charming away from a 2-year-old so you can have another picture? Yes, I am. And that's the picture that's inside on the table in the art room. And after we took that picture, she grabbed, and again, no offense, Daddy, she grabbed my arm and she said, that was so amazing, I can die now. And I know that was probably a little hyperbole there, but it was really sudden, her passing, and hard. But for me, and maybe for all of you, having these memories and these moments where she was so joyful and happy kind of get you through it and make it all better. Thank you for being here today, and thanks for letting me share. So, I think maybe my brothers, I've talked too much, I'm sorry. Maybe my brothers have something to share too.
Thanks, Kate. Does everyone here know that my mom thought that Bill and Hillary Clinton were aliens from another planet? Like, bent on world domination, like one election cycle at a time. It's kind of true. She had that slightly wacky sense of humor. It sort of turned a room when she'd ever say something like that. It was great. I'll remember a lot of things about her. She cared deeply about the human condition. That when you break life down, every human being encompasses the same things. The meaning of life, search for happiness, sense of curiosity. And on the flip side, fear of isolation and ultimately death. It was this passion that led her to be a psychotherapist, helping countless people throughout her life, both near and far. She believed in ultimate justice in the world and worked tirelessly for women and the underrepresented. Growing up, I'll remember that we used to play hooky together when I was in kindergarten and get McDonald's chicken sandwiches and drive around and talk. I was 4. What did we talk about? I don't know. But I remember those times really vividly, and I loved them. Even that young, I felt like I was breaking the rules in some way. Something that stuck with me to this day. Go against the grain. Take a chance. Take life in your own hands. Do what you want to do. Have fun and make lasting memories. this was her gift. And later on in life, she'd let me play drums in the basement for hours upon hours, sometimes 6, 8, I don't know. And make dinner for all my friends who would come over and be hanging out there the whole time. And I won't get into the parties that she kind of allowed me to have down there, but she was definitely integral in making me a cool guy in high school. Thanks, Dad, too. I'll remember our family trips to Rockport, Massachusetts, and going to Ellen's Harborside restaurant, which was the best for lobsters around. Really cool art galleries in Bearskin Neck, and a general store that was like Christmas for kids in the summer. We all really loved going. I'll remember that my mom taught me to always stick up for myself whenever necessary, and never miss an opportunity to tell somebody how you really felt. For me, this has led to some of the strongest relationships with friends and family that I could ever ask for. And really only my wife tops her for getting me to talk about stuff. So maybe that's why she really loved you. And I'll also remember that she always told me to face the music when I had done something wrong. She had such integrity and allowed me to learn through my own mistakes how to be a person of substance and of strong moral character. Truth was a huge part of who she was, and she loved the real part of everyone. I'll remember that I was her guinea pig for her new vitamin and supplement discoveries. She even got me to take these adrenaline pills one time, saying it would help me focus. If you ever drank 15 cups of coffee in 10 minutes, you might understand what it felt like. I actually still have the rest of the bottle if anybody wants it. I actually have like a whole entire pharmacy of homeopathic medicine at my house, if anybody wants any. I remember she told me I could be anything I wanted. Travel the world. Don't be afraid. Go to Colorado, Peru, Nantucket, Boston. Explore life, people, relationships, beauty, and loss. Think deeper into things. Explore every opportunity that comes your way. There are so many layers to life and more to learn at any point. Young or old, doesn't matter what age you're at. She taught me that every person that comes in and out of your world is worth it. Never judge anyone at any time, for you have no idea what their life might really be like. We're all here searching for the same something, through good times and bad. Every relationship, however fleeting, was an opportunity to strengthen yourself or work on being the best you could be. And I'll remember that she loved cinnamon Altoids and Pepsi with real sugar, no high fructose corn syrup. That was her bugaboo. Wachusett potato chips, Trader Joe's ultra chocolate ice cream. We have 12 half gallons inside, so everybody should really have some. She loved her dogs, Alex, Samantha, Casey, Maggie, and Brendan, almost as much as her children, maybe more. I remember selling my parents their house a few years back and watching her renovate, design, and decorate the entire space with such grace and precision. She was much more of an artist than you might know. Her taste was really impeccable, and her style was all her own. I'll remember that she took incredible care of my twin girls on Tuesdays. And only blamed her recent inability to come on long-time back problems. And she knew it was more than that. But didn't want to burden anybody. In fact, that Saturday night, before she went into the hospital, she came over to watch the girls, because she wanted to, so that we could go to Providence and have dinner with great friends. And we got home at 11 o'clock and she wanted to talk for an hour. I said, you should probably go home. She said, nah, how was it? Tell me how it was. Where'd you go? Talk about the food. How's Adam and Meg? She always wanted to talk. Just more and more and more. And I'll remember our recent family vacation this past March in St. Augustine for my brother Jared's wedding. Honestly, it was the best family time that we've ever had. And she planned the entire thing. And looking back, it was pretty darn magical. She got to witness an incredible expression of love. Go to Disney. Hug the love of her life, Prince Charming. Again, sorry, Dad. And step back and see exactly what she had created. And her 3 kids. And our now growing families. For her, life was complete. And I'll remember the 10 days she was in the hospital, and all she wanted to do was talk. More chattering and gossip. Just talk about this and that, like nothing had changed, or the inevitable hadn't caught up to her. She was beautifully courageous, and embraced her final days with such peace and dignity. I remember that she always spoke of this energy in the world, that any one of us could manipulate at any time, whether collective or individual. This was her life force. Her medallions, crystals, rituals, backyard labyrinth. They all represented a sense of something more, something spiritual, something guiding, and something purely loving and optimistic. But what I'll most remember is that in her lifetime, she didn't like the word goodbye, but rather so long. My grandfather, her father, we called him Puppy. He said that goodbye was too definite, and so long meant that you would always see that person again. It was just a matter of time. Well, Mom, I love you and I miss you more than words. And so long. So long. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm the oldest, Jared, who got married a couple months ago. And I just have a few things to say. I don't think anywhere as long as Jeff or Kate. I've had a lot of trouble since my mom passed, dealing with how I felt. Going from the elation of going from the elation of being married and having such a wonderful time in Florida, and have her suddenly just not be here anymore. She was one of my best friends. As Kate and Jeff alluded to, I could talk to her about anything, any day, any time. She just loved to talk about anything. She would she would always listen. She would never judge. Always be supportive. But always realistic. She was never too optimistic. Something that people told me that I am. So she was a good barometer, and she would always kind of balanced that out for me. I talk to her multiple times a week. Sometimes just to say, hey, what's going on? I am eternally glad that my mom got to see Amanda and I get married and celebrate that joyous occasion. As Jeff said, it was magical. Everything was just perfect. The wedding went off without a hitch. It had rained the previous 2 days on Thursday and Friday. We got there, it was pouring out. We had to make a mad dash to get our rehearsal done in the blowing wind and 48-degree weather on the beach, and then get to the rehearsal dinner the night before. And she did a spectacular job getting that rehearsal dinner together. She agonized over making sure it was perfect and making sure the place was exactly what Amanda and I would want. Excuse me. And it really ended up being that way. We had exactly who we wanted to be there to celebrate with, and the food was amazing. The conversation was great as usual, and it's a night I'll never forget. My overwhelming sadness because of all this is mixed with anger that this happened so quickly. I was looking forward to having her and my dad potentially retire to Florida, where we're considering settling, and for her to develop new wonderful relationships with Amanda's family. And she really loved her. I'm not exactly sure if Amanda grasps that concept, because she really only met her about 4 or 5 times. But as Terry and Jeff and Kate have mentioned, she had this amazing, and my dad, this amazing sense just to meet someone and know exactly how good a person they are and how good their, how good their inner soul is. And she recognized that, absolutely right off the bat with Amanda. I was hoping that she would, potentially live close enough that we could visit each other and see each other on a regular basis. I feel like I'm still in shock. We all miss her so much, and part of me still expects her to walk through those doors or walk right up and still be here. One of the things that I'll always remember is how my mom helped find my career as a physician assistant. I had graduated from Boston College in 1993, and probably went through about 8 or 9 years of going back and forth and working in multiple, different jobs, from fast food at McDonald's and being a manager, and going to CVS and working as a retail person, and then going to financial services and working there for a few years. But I never really felt like it was a good job. It was fine, paid the bills, but it wasn't something that I loved. And I basically enlisted her help, and after I got laid off from my financial service job in 2001, and we really dug deep and really tried to figure out what motivated me. what excited me and what got me up and really pushed me and really made me happy on a daily basis. She helped me realize that I love organized chaos. The potential to be faced with a different experience every day and to have to make quick decisions on my feet. And McDonald's actually was kind of like that. So, I know you'll laugh, but I love the people I work with, and I worked for a time on a highway in Connecticut, and it would be slow at times, and then at times you would have 5 buses roll in with hundreds of people, and you had to feed them right away and get the food out, and that was something that I thrived on. That was something that I really enjoyed. So it was a matter of just finding that, not in food, and something else. And I went to BC and I got a degree in psychology, and one of the reasons why I went into that was because of my mom. So when we were talking about this, I realized that I didn't want to go back into psychology. It was not something that I really enjoyed, but something I love hands-on and doing things with my hands and doing procedures. And I realized that I did love the medical field, but I wanted to be in the medical side as opposed to the psychological side. So I decided, we came to that decision and realized that's something that I really needed to explore. And went back to school. I eventually, graduated from UF in Florida as a physician assistant. And during that time, I realized that, my mom disclosed that she always wanted one of us to be in the medical field. So it seemed to work out pretty perfectly that way. And these last several years have been very redeeming and therapeutic for me to be able to offer her advice. She would call me up and just ask me, all different types of medical questions, and be that resource for her, which was just amazing for me. The last thing I want to say is, while I know she physically left us too early, I also know that she is spiritually looking down at us always, especially today. She always says she's bathing us with positive light. She's protecting us, and she's guiding us. She really was the rock of our family, the glue, and I hope that her passing will allow us to become closer, to share in our grief, but also strengthen our resolve to be the individuals that she cultivated and developed, and to always remember how proud she was of all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. At this time, we're going to just open things up if anybody wants to come up and say something. One of my mom's best friends, Debbie Brandt, and Leif Almendinger, who they've known for a long time, they're from Chicago and they weren't able to be here as well. But she did send a quick note that my wife Jen is going to read quickly. And then after that, if anybody would like to come up, feel free.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is from Debbie. My memories of Ellen Steinbeck. I met Ellen in 1982 at the Rhode Island Women's Shelter. Ellen was the volunteer coordinator. At that point in my life, I was completely new to Providence, having just arrived from California that winter. I didn't know anyone else besides life. I was very much alone. Ellen's kindness and acceptance meant so much to me. She radiated warmth, compassion, and humor. That wicked sense of humor was evident from the start. I remember noticing that she gave off a kind of pink aura that touched everyone around her. I'm not usually visual, but she really gave off a heart-centered color. Ellen was and is a heart-centered person. She felt everything intensely and took a deep interest in other people's well-being. Life and I felt so strongly about Ellen and David as friends that we chose them as guardians for our 3 children. As we struggled with being young parents, Ellen and David provided an example of grounded parenting that inspired and heartened us. Although we did not have much time together in the years of our friendship, we stayed in almost constant touch and visited when we could. Ellen is one of the few people I trusted completely. We did not always agree, and she could deliver home truths with an honesty that was painful at times. True friends don't always tell you what you want to hear. It is bittersweet to know that sooner or later we all have to say goodbye. I knew in the past few years that the time would be sooner rather than later. Each day that passes, I go to reach for the phone, and I am stricken again with the knowledge that we will not speak again in this life. I miss her terribly. Ellen was a wonderful person who touched so many and made this world better for having been here. I leave you with the words of Sanford Bennett. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. I pray that we shall meet on that beautiful shore. With love, Debbie and Life.
I guess my services are requested to change the tone here. The reason why I have yellow on is because Ellen and I had this long-standing joke. I don't remember what it was about, but we had this pact that whichever one of us went first, the other one would have to wear yellow to the service. So I have the sneakers on, and I have the shirt on, so I guess the joke is on me. She got me back. Anyway, I met Ellen back in graduate school in the early 80s at URI. We were in this particular class. The professor's name, I'll just say the first name to protect the innocent. Her name was Gwyneth. And we would go all the time. And one day I said, Ellen, let's do the same project together. She goes, okay, because, you know, I really love the circumplex model. I know I'm not going to sit here and go into it. And I taught her a few things about it, so we decided to do it together. And we thought we were the absolute best, which we were. Everybody liked us. There was this other woman who did the same exact thing, but she was the person who, of course, the professor loved. She was so far up her butt when the professor opened her mouth, you could see her waving. So, anyways, needless to say, Ellen and I got a B, and that woman got an A. So I said, Ellen, don't worry. Commas are, there's too many kids here, a bitch. But anyway, so this professor decided to have a party at the end of the year. And so Ellen goes, are you going? I'm like, of course. I'm not going to miss this for the world. She goes, what are you bringing? I said, it's going to be a surprise. So, me and my humor, I decided to bring 24 of crabs. And as soon as I walked into the house, I let them all go on this professor's living room rug. And the professor was totally like, what are you doing? I said, we're having crab races. And she's like, oh no. And Ellen was like laughing hysterically. I don't know if you've ever seen Ellen laugh so much that she just can't stop. But that's what she was doing. And then, you know, after, when we cooked them, we had to catch them first. Some were under the couch, some were, you know, somewhere else in the house and stuff like that. The professor was really ticked off at me. But I didn't care. She gave me a B, you know. What the heck? This is what you get, you know. So we found them all, and where did we end up eating them all? On a living room rug. So anyway, that's when I met Ellen back in graduate school. And then one day, I just walked into Kent County Mental Health Center. We took different paths in the field. She became a family therapist. I became a psychologist. And I walked into the mental health center, and there was Ellen. I'm like, Ellen. She goes, Ozzy. I said, no, you can't use that word here because that's not my real name. Nobody knows that. You have to use my real name. She goes, but everybody knows you as Ozzy. You know, I said, well, it is what it is. Time to be professional. But she didn't supervise me. I did other things there, like I did a lot of crisis work and stuff. And she learned a lot from me. I learned a lot from her. And when you were talking about Terry's evaluation of Ellen, well, of Ellen's of Terry, she never had to evaluate me. Instead, one day she took me aside because I was so off the wall and gave me a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I read it, you know, because that was my assignment from Ellen, even though we didn't work in the same departments. I worked in crisis, she worked in children's services, which was kind of funny. But anyway, and another humorous event I must share with you is back in 1988, I decided to take a job with DCYF as a child abuse investigator. And Ellen was having this big, huge Halloween party. And Maura's already laughing. So I had this great costume, a Gumby costume that somebody had made for me. But earlier in the week, I had gotten in a car accident with a state car and I broke my left hand. And so I was in a cast. And then that day, I'm looking everywhere for this Gumby costume. I told Ellen I was going to have the costume of all costumes. And I opened up the garage, I couldn't find it, so you know how garages fold down and stuff. Well, I stuck my middle finger in because I couldn't do this hand because it was in a cast, and I broke this finger. So then I had to drive to the ER with a stick shift. And I'm like, oh no, now what am I going to do for a costume? So, those of you who know me, I used to be a disc jockey in nightclubs and stuff. It was one of my other off-the-wall traits. So I said, okay, I have some stuff from when I disc jockey private parties. I might as well grab that. So I grabbed my Tammy Faye Baker mask, some can feathers, and a monk outfit with the hood and everything. So I walked in and Ellen's like, what are you? I said, I'm Tammy Faye Baker turned monk. So she got a kick out of that. She was dressed as a nun, and I don't remember what you were dressed as, David.
A convict.
A convict. That's right. You had the ball and chain. They were all picking on you because of that. And I think Kate said something like, who is this friend of yours, Mom? She's like, so cool. Well, needless to say, we all had quite a bit to drink that night. And for the life of me, I do not remember this next thing. But supposedly Maura and Kate said that I was so trashed, I picked up a guitar and started singing words about how much I loved myself.
The song was called I Like Me.
Thank you. I have no recollection of that, which shows how much alcohol I had that night. But while working at the mental health center, doing crisis work, a lot of times Ellen would follow me on the schedule. This was like after hours and stuff. I got called to the Walt police station to see this woman who was totally gone, so to speak. So I'm sitting in there evaluating her, and I'm like, Esther, are you hearing voices? 5 minutes later. Yeah. Well, are they male or female voices? And she'd look at me and think about it, and male. I said, well, are they inside your head or out of your head? Outside your head. Her 80-year-old mother's sitting there, and she yells out, Esther, the lady asked to see your teeth. Show her your teeth. She took her whole denture plate out. By that time, I lost it. I had to leave the room. I kind of stood up against the wall and slid down. I could not stop laughing at all. So then Ellen comes in. I couldn't even give her a report. I just couldn't. You know, you get that thing, and you just can't stop laughing at all. It's just the funniest thing you've ever seen or heard. And, you know, Ellen and I were true warriors in the field. We felt that if it was funny, you laugh, because that's what normal is. So I just said to her, it's your turn. So Ellen went in to try to finish the assessment, and the woman kept taking out her denture plate and putting them back in. So, of course, Ellen came back outside, slid down the wall next to me, and laughed with me. We just couldn't stop laughing. So then I said to Ellen, well, I filled out the committal papers. You can just follow through with it. I'm done. Laughed all the way home, and I said, you know what? I know how to get Ellen good. So I found these wind-up teeth with feet. And I put them on her desk. So when she came in Monday morning, all you could hear in the whole building was Ellen laughing hysterically. When she saw them, she knew exactly what it was all about. But anyway, we also came up with these mental health quotes, so to speak. You remember some of these, David. Some of them are quite humorous. Ellen had wanted me to make t-shirts and bumper stickers, but every once in a while we would just get in these moods where we would just laugh about our work and stuff. So one of these things I came up with that every time I said it since then, she still laughed the same exact laugh. And the quote was, "I used to be a narcissist till I cured myself." And she thought that was the greatest. She thought that was the absolute best. And I said, "Ellen, but I'm not done." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I used to give myself therapy in the mirror. And when I wanted to set limits, I'd wear sunglasses." Oh, that totally. She's like, "You got any more?" But I won't do any more than that. It'll take too much time, and I'm sure there's other people that want to speak. But anyway, I never had my appliances cleaned when she came over to my house. It is, especially when my daughter was born, and she was very colicky. Ellen came over and took care of her for me for a night. And the last time she came over to my house, I had surgery. And I said, "Ellen, why don't I make you something to eat?" She goes, "Nah, I think we should just go out to eat." She knew my ability to cook was... Anyway, I wrote this back in Facebook when I found out of Ellen's passing, and I just want to share it with everybody, and then I'll be finished. For my dear friend Ellen, relationships are eternal. Separation does not mean separation of our souls. Someone's leaving sometimes feels like the greatest pain we have ever suffered. Ellen, you went through this when Nessie passed, and now I'm going through this now that you have passed. But our relationships do not die. They just change form. Faith means knowing that no one is ever really gone. Rest in peace, my dear friend Ellen. Some of us are lucky to have had a friendship like this that most do not get this chance. I will always be grateful for knowing you and your family, and I will always cherish our friendship.
Hi, I have to read this, and I still won't get through it. I'm Mindy Steinman. I'm an only child, raised by a single mom, following my dad's death when I was 3. I met Ellen the week before my mother died from cancer. I was 27. That was 27 years ago. Call it bad luck, fate, or crappy karma to lose my mom so young. Call it a miracle that Ellen came into my life just then. She was my therapist, my friend, my confidant, my mentor, and my surrogate mom. We signed all our emails love. We talked regularly for over a quarter of a century about emotions, fears, hopes, politics, spirituality, her grandchildren, women's rights, real estate, Downton Abbey. She interpreted my dreams and helped me choose a washer and dryer. Never buy a Maytag. And she shared her admiration/lust for Johnny Lee Miller and, yes, Prince Charming. I heard the whole Prince Charming story. She was a little afraid she embarrassed all of you, but she was so happy. I was in graduate school when we met, and she charged me then a miraculously low student rate. Years later, never having adjusted her fee, I insisted she give herself a raise. Ellen informed me that she intended to be at my wedding at least a decade before I met my husband, Jack. I was single for a long time. And she heard about the bad dates, the boring dates, the lack of dates for years. Perhaps she was always more confident than I that I would ultimately meet my soulmate and live the life I had been wishing for so long. And no one celebrated it more when it happened than she did. Ellen and Dave had traveled to D.C. for our wedding weekend. They came to a picnic at our house for our nearest and dearest the day before the ceremony. She even bought David a lavender shirt and a purple tie to wear so he would match our colors. And he did. One of the highlights of the weekend, in addition to marrying my beloved, was that Ellen finally met all of my friends that she had heard about for years. Randy, my dearest girlfriend, met Ellen in the elevator at the hotel where our guests stayed. And later, Randy told me it was like meeting a celebrity. For weeks after the wedding, Ellen told me what a wonderful celebration it had been. and recounted details of the conversations she had with our friends and family. And over 27 years, I learned about her family, the one she came from, and the one she created. She taught me what a nice Jewish girl needs to understand, having married into a very large Irish Catholic family. She gave great insight from her own experience as to how an emotional, intuitive Pisces negotiates, compromises, and becomes a team with her spatially challenged, intellectual husband. David, the two of you are my marriage role model. My mom saw me through my childhood, my adolescence, and young adulthood. Ellen got me from there to middle age. She saw my final performance at Trinity Rep Conservatory in Providence and came to see me in Worcester in my first professional acting performance after I graduated. She saw me through numerous career changes, cross-country moves, and heartbreaks. She gave me a beautiful embroidered handkerchief of hers as a gift to carry with me on my wedding day. 2 summers ago, I tagged along when my husband was doing research here in Boston, mostly because I got to visit with Helen. We spent a lovely day together, catching up over lunch and indulging ourselves at Vera Bradley. Throughout the years, she praised me and challenged me and saw strengths in me I didn't always recognize or trust. She and my mom were the two people who had the greatest impact on me. They are the two women I relied on most, learned from most, miss most, and love most. Ellen, every day I see something, think something, feel something I want to share with you, and I cannot imagine a time when that will not be. You gave me more than I could ever repay. I will strive to live my life as you lived yours, and in a way that would make you proud. I will be forever grateful to you. I miss you and I love you. Thank you for letting me share with you.
My name is Mara Mullaney, and I am Ellen's niece. And other than her brother and sister, I am the lucky one that got the most time with Ellen. Unlike her children, I am absolutely going to cry, so just deal with it. I have been struck time and again by how many people considered my aunt to be their best friend. This is somebody who just opened herself up and poured herself out to everybody and just made the most indelible impact. You know, for me, I was so blessed to have the most unique relationship that I think anyone could ever possibly have. When I was born, Ellen was 19, and she had had several years of some really significant health issues. And I have been told that she was in a tough place with depression and just not feeling good. And when I was born, she said it would give her a reason to get up every day, come and visit, and help take care of me. And I just hope she understands that no matter what good that could have possibly been for her, she gave back 10,000-fold in my lifetime. My aunt was the single most important person there ever has been in my life. This was my teacher, mentor, best friend, role model. It's amazing. I don't know how there could ever have been enough hours in a day for all the conversations she had with so many people. Because it's the same thing. I spoke to her almost daily. And yet it's the same thing. Politics, spirituality, movies, the royal family, our family of origin. I was in my 20s and I moved to Rhode Island, and I was really blessed to have many, many years of kind of growing up all over again with my aunt and her family. My 3 cousins were like additional siblings to me. And I could sit here and tell you a million stories, but that's not important. The details aren't what's important. Dinners, parties, laughter, more laughter than you can ever imagine. In preparing for this memorial, I have boxes and boxes of photographs. And it was incredibly painful to look through them and just kind of relive the years, so to speak. But the thing that was overwhelming to me was how much fun we all had. Just a ton of it. Birthday parties with, always, didn't matter how old you were, party hats, blowers. Jared would always have 2 party hats on. He'd look like the devil. And he'd crack himself up more than anybody. The dogs would have party hats on. There was a tradition that started. You would take pictures. When somebody would blow out the candles, you would have to take a second picture. It was called simulated blowing, where afterwards you'd go, and someone would take that picture. The Halloween party is still legendary. It's talked about as the most hysterical time. I had been sober about a year then. I got sober in 1987, so I was the only sober person at this party. And that includes the children. Kate and her friend Chrissy Spellman were dressed as French maids, and they were bringing drinks and kind of siphoning off a little extra. And at one point they called me upstairs. They said, "Mara, you got to come upstairs. This is really important." Jeff was 11, almost 12, and he was sitting on the edge of the tub, and he was absolutely green. Anyway, it was a hysterical night, and one that's still talked about. My aunt is really an example of a life well lived. She raised 3 incredibly interesting, successful, well-adjusted kids. She had a relationship with my uncle that's the most amazing thing. There were 2 things that I keep thinking about today, and one of them was this, and this was to do with you, David. My aunt said the most important thing is that you find somebody to marry or love or spend your life with who's willing to do the hard work with you. And that's really what it comes down to. The happy stuff wears off real quick, the fireworks and all that. But if somebody is willing to stick it out and do the hard work with you and get through and not run and deal, then you have found something really special. And believe it, their marriage was very special. Great example. They both brought out the best in each other, intellectually, just in encouraging each other and supporting each other. Even when they probably wanted to rip each other's heads off, they still supported each other, and that's really important. The other thing is that Ellen was big on this. No matter what you do in your life, no matter what happens, even if something is an absolute disaster, if you learn anything from the experience, it's not a wasted experience. Just learn from it. Learn and move on. Don't worry. Just keep striving to be the best version of yourself that you can be on any given day. And there's not much more that I can add that hasn't already been said. I'm just struck by how similar all these memories are of the great conversation, that just breaking bread with people, the meals. And somebody better have the stuffed mushroom recipe, because
I have a whole recipe book.
you got it. That's important. My aunt can cook. Boy, she can cook. The last time I got to speak to her, and this again, even in a crisis, she's always making jokes. I only got a couple of seconds because, you know, she was not well, and it was about a day and a half before she passed, and she was on oxygen. And I'm trying to sum up a lifetime in a couple of minutes, and I said, I promise you I'll take every lesson that you ever gave me and try to pay it forward and teach next generations and all of that, and just try to use everything you taught me. And she said, well, then you're going to have to become a social worker. That's not going to happen. But I just hope that I always wanted to be an auntie because I wanted to be able to pay that relationship forward. And I was blessed with two unbelievably incredible, awesome nieces and an incredible, wonderful nephew who I adore and I don't see nearly enough of. And I miss them and I love them and I try to call them regularly. And I just want to have that kind of relationship with them, which is really like, okay, I know she gave birth to 3. I feel like I was the 4th kid in so many ways. And I just want you all to know that I feel about you the way Ellen felt about me. And for my daughter, Ellen became someone that she could talk to also. And I want you to always just try to remember what I just said. Just try to be the best version of you that you can be every day. And always know how much you're loved. And I'll leave it at that. Just, it's incredibly gratifying. It will never dull the pain. But knowing the impact that my aunt had on so many and left such an indelible mark is definitely some small sense of comfort. And I just hope we can pay it all forward somehow and teach these incredible lessons to coming generations. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not okay, but I'll I'll pretend I'm okay. I'm not. I'm Dorothy, and I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to give you any jokes or make you laugh. I don't really know where to begin. I wish I could stop crying, but I can't. My relationship with Ellen has spanned the cross of 35 years. And it began, she was my therapist. A mutual friend of ours said, here's her name. And she was at the Interfaith Counseling Place in Providence at that time. And I remember looking at her and saying to myself, oh, she looks so jolly. And, you know, but there was something there. There was this flicker of light. And I said, I can trust this person. I can trust her. And so we began our work together. And I had a very tumultuous background. My family of origin, they were like nutcases. And, you know, sometimes violent nutcases, sometimes, you know, when it was good, it was very, very good, and when it was bad, it was hard. And it took great courage. But Ellen was with me week after week, sometimes hour after hour, sometimes moment to moment. And she would always answer the phone when I called. And again, like everyone has said, you know, as, well, I don't want to race ahead of myself. Because we dealt with chaos. We dealt with domestic violence. We talked about all kinds of abuses, and many of which I experienced and that of my family. But Ellen would always shore me up, and she would help support me from beneath up. And she always believed in my gifts. And, we talked about the nature of being protected. We talked about everything you could possibly imagine. Yes, from the color of hair to food and. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is after we got through our work as therapist and client, we evolved into a really, really beautiful, deep, provocative friendship. And she believed in me. When no one else believed in me, she believed in me. When I decided to go back up on stage, she was there supporting me when no one else was. And she gave me hope and she gave me strength. And we would talk about everything from the most raunchy, funny. I wish I could tell you some of the stories, but I can't. Because it's X-rated and we can't do this now. But, sometimes when I would go to see her, this was in Rhode Island. I live in California now. As I told you, I come from this really kind of weird background. And my dad always had either a Cadillac or a Lincoln Continental, or you try to get the picture, he's from Italy. Need I say more? And so one day, I had his car. And it was my turn to go to my session with Ellen. And I'm hearing this noise in the trunk of my car. And I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, I hope the police doesn't I hope they don't pull me over because there's a dead body in the truck. And I get to Ellen's house, and I was like, oh, Ellen. I said, what? What's the matter? I said, you've got to come out. You've got to come out because there's someone in the trunk of the car. And she looked at me, and she took me by the arm, and we went outside to the car. She said, "No, Dorothy, I'm going to tell you something." And I said, what's that? She said, do you realize that 99.9 of the people in Rhode Island would not be thinking there's a dead body in your trunk? And I said, really? I said, yes. And she was just there, just telling me, what? So, also, I have a number of extraordinary gifts. Some people might say I hear voices, but she always believed in my highly evolved intuition. You could call me psychic or whatever, but she believed in me and still does in these days believe in me, because I said to myself, okay, if I don't get up to talk, she's going to say, why did you fly 3,000 miles to be quiet? Talk already. You don't have to be funny. Just tell them. And again, like everyone else here, we talked about hair color. We talked about politics. We talked about, you name it, to the most silly, to the most provocative and profound, and always with that sense. And it was also when we were, after time, it's so beautiful to be known by someone. Just to be known for who you are and what you are. And to be loved for that without judgment. And she imparted that with me and me with her. And we developed trust. And we developed this deep rapport, this deep joy for each other's lives. We celebrated I feel like I know Ellen's kids and grandkids, and it's like we talked every week, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. I live now in LA, so I hadn't seen her in a while. And she told me about her health, but I didn't know how serious until I got the phone call from David, and I kind of went into shock. And the first thing that went through my mind, as ironic as it sounds, is, I better call Ellen. What would Ellen, I gotta call Ellen about this. And I went to dial the phone, and I had to put it down. And I said, she's not there. I can't pick up the phone and call her. And I'm sorry. Well, since I've been here, like the last day or so, that 781 exchange of her phone number, I would see the 781 exchange, and I would know she's not going to pick up the phone. So I listened with the gift that she so believed in me, and I miss her terribly. And as much as I know we'll see each other again, I can't pick up the phone and call her. And she would always say, hello. And I would say, hello. And I'd say, what are you doing? And I'm cooking. Oh, so am I. And she said, well, what are you cooking? Well, I'm just broiling a chicken breast and, some string beans. And then she told me what she's cooking. I was like, oh, let me just put a lean cuisine in there or something, because I can't keep up with how you can cook. And she had, and I want you to know this, the deepest, most profound admiration and love and pride in you, her children. And David, her husband, always, through 35 years, they always were them. And now the little ones, how she sent me emails of the little ones and telling me how she was teaching them how to dance and that they love music. And I know I'm rambling. I guess the only thing I can do, and I still do, I keep saying to myself, but Ellen, why now? Why now? Why now? There's just so much joy around you now. Why now? And I guess there are some questions that just don't have an answer. Not in this moment, anyway. I can't find the answer to the why now. All I can do is believe in everything she taught me. She gave me the tools, that I would never have had to survive. She always used to say to me, if one person believes in you, just one person believes in you, your psyche can remain intact. And she believed in me. And for that, I will be forever grateful. And I do believe that one moment, because we believed in timelessness, in incarnations, and different stratas of life. She embraced life in every scope you can imagine. And yes, there were hours of laughter and laughter and laughter, holding onto my sides, and then we would speak about the most profound things. And the book. Dorothy, what do you think about the book? Yeah, just put in the female voice of the book. And it's a beautiful book. And a great tribute. You made a great team. and you still do. And I'm sure now that she's not locked into a body, she'll be able to help you in a way she never could before. So I'm not going to ramble on and on and on. I just, in conclusion, I want to say, Ellen, I love you. I love you with the depth of my being, and I'm sure everyone here today feels the same way. And I used to be so poor that all I had were a pocket full of rainbows. And life got better for me. And she'd say to me, Dorothy, you've arrived. And I'd smile. And so I guess in conclusion, I want to say, Ellen, you arrived. You arrived. Thank you. Thank you.
What an afternoon of learning about a friend. I also thought I was her closest friend. And that was one of the most extraordinary parts of Ellen, that no matter what conversation, you were convinced you were the only one that was having that conversation with her. And she brought to all of us that sense of presence, that sense of love. I was one of her lunch buddies, and every single I've known Ellen for over 25 years, but we've only become close in the last 5. But we went to lunch once a month, and we would go to one of a couple of restaurants, and we'd walk in, they would know us, and we'd say, relax, we're here for 3 hours at least, so just take your time, but we'll make it worth your while. Ellen was very determined that because of her early experience as wait staff when she was very young, that we be extremely fair to the wait staff. So she wouldn't let me calculate the bill. I think she didn't think I would be quite so generous. But I gave her whatever she told me to give her, and that was that. We talked about everything, too. But a good part of our conversations were about politics, and we were committed to the nostalgia and the activism of the 60s. So much of our conversation was around that time and how important it was for us and how to bring it forward into the future, because we don't have peace yet. We don't have justice yet. And this would be a major part of our conversations. And I also had the telephone conversations, and I know so many of you will appreciate that I would call sometime and say, Ellen, this is just 5 minutes. And it was always an hour later. So I just wanted to say that. But what I'd like us to do to close this afternoon, we're going to have a piece of music. But before we do, I'd like to ask all of us if we could turn our thoughts to so many different parts of our lives and our souls and ourselves going forward. So I've selected to read to you, with the help of some music from Elena and Benjamin. We're going to do Pete Seeger's Turn, Turn, Turn. And Ellen would love this, and because Pete Seeger died just before she did, and this happens to be a very big day in Rhode Island for Pete Seeger, and Ellen would really be very committed to that as well. So if we could get some help Sure, sure. What we're going to do is ask Elena to help us with the chorus. So we'll just sing the turn, turn, turn chorus. I'll read the verse, and then we'll just do the chorus. How's that? Everybody in? We all in? Okay. Okay.
So we can all sing together.
Yeah. Just get us started.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to reap. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to laugh, a time to weep.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
A time to build up, a time to break down. A time to dance, a time to mourn. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
A time of love, a time of hate. A time of war, a time of peace. A time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
A time to gain, a time to lose. A time to rend, a time to sow. A time for love, a time for hate. A time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
You're on.
Thank you, Marilyn. We're now blessed to have Elena and Benjamin continue playing a version of Imagine, which was actually the song that my mom and Jeff danced to at his wedding and one of her favorites. So thank you, Elena, for being here all the way from California to make this happen, and for Benjamin playing. It means a lot to us.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us all, isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living a life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Well, I hope someday you will join us all, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Well, I hope someday you will join us, oh, and the world will live as one.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. So, believe it or not, right up until the very end, my mom was just cracking jokes. And one of the things we talked at great length about was her love of Trader Joe's and how much she was going to miss shopping at Trader Joe's and especially eating their chocolate ice cream. And so we have 12 half gallons of Trader Joe's chocolate ice cream inside. And we hope that you can join us and eat some ice cream and celebrate her life and her love. And thank you all for being here today.
There you go. When is you want to go on bourbon or what? I am. What's the date? Just send me an email and I'll check my schedule. Oh my God.
I didn't get it until I was down breaking down the next week. I was staying there for a week. And my neighbor took the phone and they put in the bag. I didn't see it until 6 weeks later.
Oh, that's all right.
You come down. We're going to have
The 8th and 9th?
9th and 10th.
9th and 10th.
I'll email you. I'll write you. I've got something I want to show you from my phone.
I'm not here for a while. Okay.
It's the first two in the whole book. So here's the second one.
That keeps coming back.
Yes.
I'm not going to
I'm not sad. I'm
Nancy Ryan.
Hi, Nancy. Yes.
I was at your wedding.
Yes, you
my
were.
My husband and Alan were first.
I know.
I'm sorry for you.
I know.
You know, I'm sitting here. I know you're sorry. But I think wonderful.
She was.
She would be so happy.
She would, and she launched them all. It was almost as if until we were all okay. I remember meeting you.
Brenda, John Ryan's daughter.
Yes.
How are you? She was over the top, you know. It was such a nice, typical. So, I mean, everybody captured her. So, I mean, just with the little I knew
I
of
think
her.
so too. I think
But I feel like the loss of not having known her better.
Yeah.
But I wish you well in your future. I had a talk with the president of your college.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. I may be there.
Well, whatever suits you. Just
I'd like to be. I'd like that to work out. It's a wonderful place, and I'm a wonderful church to go to too.
well, Ellen will be with you no
And
matter
enjoy
where you
that.
go. Yes, I took a copy for my brother-in-law, Bill Ryan. I know, huh? To do it last year. And